Well, I am so excited to spend some time with Cynthia here today, and you'll be watching this as a group in a replay or as a watch party, and then you can put comments, and one of us will try to get back to you. And so this is, worked out best for us just because of schedules and time zones. Cynthia's 6 hours ahead of me, and I'm like way out in another land. So Cynthia is a nurse practitioner and functional nutritionist. She's a second-time TEDx speaker, creator of Holistic Blueprint, and co-host of Everyday Wellness podcast. So in addition to all of this, she is a very committed and present mother and wife, and she turned her passion from helping women that were struggling with weight gain and perimenopausal issues into menopause, into supporting them through a mind-body connection. I associate terms like vulnerable, compassionate, authentic living, and badass when I think of Cynthia.
Thank you.
Drop an F-bomb and a truth bomb all in one sentence. And she's a storyteller. And I think that it's really important because she finds the root of the problem. She doesn't just prescribe. And that's where I think a lot of things are missing in today's medical mesh between Western medicine and holistic care. So she's a guru on intermittent fasting, and we're having our intermittent fasting challenge right now. So we're going to dig in. So welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's always interesting when you connect with friends about, the things they choose to kind of shine a light on. And I definitely value and appreciate all the wonderful things you do with your own clients. You create a really wonderful community for them.
Thank you. Yeah. It's so fun that we can connect, and that there's an abundance theory here because we run very different kinds of systems and programs, but we also align with the superpowers of fasting and other things. So
that's right.
Great. Well, one term that I think is thrown around, I throw it around, is living your best life. And so I just wanted to know what your definition of living your best life was.
That's a great question. When I think about living your best life, it's really being in a place where you're happy and truly happy, not just happy on the outside, but happy with who you are in time and space, having committed, loving relationships, however that manifests in itself, if that's with a partner, with your children, with your friends, with your family, really important, finding something that allows you to resonate or connect. And by that, I mean something you're passionate about, not just, I go to work every day and I don't love my job, but being really passionate about some way that you are serving others. And then, the other piece of that is just honoring your body by filling it with good, healthy food, resting when you need to, and, moving your body. Like I always talk about that mind-body connection, how important it is, but also another way that we live our best lives is by really treating ourselves well. And I think for many women, when we have children that are younger, I have a teenager and a tween. So I'm kind of at a different stage than I know some other people may be. I finally have a little bit more time to be able to invest in myself. And I've really made that a big priority. I think for a lot of women, we think of self-care as being selfish. And what we don't recognize is that if you don't invest in you, you don't have much to offer everyone else. I mean, think about when your kids are really little, and my kids are only 2 years apart. And those first couple of years, it's a blur and you barely remember to shower. It's all about them. And then all of a sudden they start getting a little older, a little more independent. You can actually do your makeup. You might be able to, put on a nice outfit or go on a date. And you start to remember you're still a human being. You're not just mom. So I think living your best life is really honoring yourself on, every level, spiritually, mentally, physically. And like I mentioned, I think there are just so many women who kind of forget about themselves, and then they get stuck in a rut in their 40s and 50s and their kids are older, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I had stopped taking care of myself, so many years ago. So,
and really don't know how to find that again. It's like, it's lost, it's not like riding a bike. It's like having to rediscover and peel back those layers again. So
exactly.
I love that. So how did intermittent fasting land into your life? Because obviously you were, 20 years into nurse practitioner, and it's not something that's really mainstream. So how did you find out about it, or what made you, grab onto this superpower?
Yeah. So I guess the easiest way to explain that is that I literally flew into a wall into perimenopause. And for those that aren't familiar with that term, it's the 5 to 7 years preceding menopause. And I'd always been super fit. I never had any problems, maintaining my weight. And seemingly overnight, I had a super stressful year. We had bought and sold a house. I was in a nutrition program. I was working as a nurse practitioner. I had little people that I was taking care of, and I put on a bunch of weight, and I was like, well, where did this come from? And so, you go through all, your nutrition's on key, you're exercising, probably over exercising, probably restricting too many calories, wasn't sleeping. I just didn't feel good. And a colleague of mine actually suggested it at the same time that a trainer I was working with brought it up. And I thought it was bunk. I didn't believe in it. And then I started doing it. I felt good. I had plenty of energy. I started to sleep better. I made even better food choices. I started to lose the weight that I had gained. And so for me, it was a kind of a spiritual awakening, if you will. I think even though I've been practicing in Western medicine for a long time, I do believe that, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And so as I became more receptive to new ideas, I really started to embrace it. I just never knew that it would be the thing that I would be known for. That's the component of intermittent fasting that makes me laugh.
Right. It's funny how we fall into those things, I mean, it's I guess probably happened. Obviously, the universe was speaking to you is how I believe those things happen. But I had the same sort of a pattern where I was just like at the end of my rope with a lot of things. Came to me when I needed it most. So
yeah.
So we both believe it's a superpower. What are the top reasons that you have women fast, or that you think are the top ways for it to become the superpower in your life?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people choose to focus on the fat loss aspect. And let's be honest, I mean, I'm sure all of us would love to, be in a position where it worked effectively for that. But I think more about brain health. I think about improved cognition, lowered insulin levels. So insulin is actually a hormone in our body. It's naturally occurring. We want insulin levels to be low. When insulin levels are low, inflammation is down. It means our blood sugar is at a more acceptable level. It reduces our likelihood of developing diabetes as well as Alzheimer's disease, which, if no one's heard this term before, I call it type 3 diabetes. It is so, so important that we manage our blood sugar properly. I just think about, the concept of autophagy, which is a fancy way of saying, cleaning up a diseased or disordered cells. When we're fasted, that's actually when our body optimizes this principle. And then, the other thing that I really think about is that it improves our blood sugar, improves blood pressure, improves our cholesterol panel. So there's lots of psychological and physiologic ways that intermittent fasting is really beneficial. But I think when you look in the lay literature, you look at, conventional discussions, it always centers around fat loss, but it's so much more than that.
Right.
And I really feel like it's a key strategy for people kind of getting to a point where they I call it grabbing your inner goddess. They kind of get back in touch with that person that they used to be, because all of a sudden they have improved self-esteem, better interpersonal relationships. And I can't think of anyone who, doesn't desire to kind of get back to how they felt when they were younger.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's too, it's like, I speak to it. I know you have too, like this fountain of youth, like my skin is better. My immunities. I mean, I have not been sick for 2 full years, which is
amazing.
It's, my family gets sick and then I don't. So I'm definitely, that inflammation and immunity is huge for me. Yeah. But you're right. I think everyone kind of starts with the fat loss, and that's the grab.
And it's more than that.
All the wonderful things around it.
Absolutely. And I think, for many women, a huge pain point, and Shannon, I'm sure you see this as well. People of something else. So money that people can, adjust to, whether they're on different time zones or they're traveling or they're on vacation. There's so many, it's so flexible that I think it's just such a great way to look at, improving your health and wellness. Now, one of the things that I think we have to be really cautionary about, though, is there are people who shouldn't do it.
Right.
And, I'm sure you probably are rigorous with your screening process to make sure that, there are people who are healthy enough to do it. But most people really could benefit from, even if it's a couple times a week.
Shortened fasting windows and those sorts of things. And I love that in your TEDx when you said it was free, flexible, and simple. And that's certainly the case. I mean, it's something that we can take different time zones or when we're traveling, and, you have it as a tool that doesn't ever go away. It's just an easy thing to take that rest. So,
right.
I know you recently had a health scare. And I wanted to know how you thought intermittent fasting prior, and then I know you took a break just to make sure that you got rejuvenated, but how it helped post with your recovery.
Yeah, so obviously I I was in Hawaii before I got sick, and so I was, doing these little videos of, I'm intermittent fasting while I'm on vacation. How cool is that? And then I came back, and so Shannon mentions that I took a break, and so it's always important to explain why I took a break. When I was in the hospital for 13 days, I lost 13 pounds, so about a pound a day. And so when I got out, I was really too thin, and my blood sugar was a disaster because I hadn't been able to eat food for 2 weeks. And so I took about a month off, and then I slowly started to do it again, much to the chagrin of my functional medicine doctor, largely because she felt just that I wasn't at a point. And I said, if I can get all my calories in inside a window, I should be fine. And so I did. And so we just kind of started with a broader window and then narrowed it back down. So absolutely, for me, I knew when I first got out of the hospital, and this is a good thing to explain, I had lost so much weight and my blood sugar was just, I wasn't fat adapted anymore. My body was just really starving. And so I had to be nothing by mouth and go to the hospital. I was in the hospital about once a week for several weeks looking at a drain. And I had to walk from one end of radiology to another, and being stubborn like I am, they offered to get me a wheelchair. I said, no, I'll be fine. And so I'm walking down this long hallway. My mother looks at me and she said, you look like you're about to pass out. And I said, my blood sugar is, it must be really low, because I was shaky and just very symptomatic. And so, just being honest with yourself when you recognize you're not in a position, and obviously I couldn't eat anything because I was having a test. But, in most instances, our body will let us know if we're not in a position to tolerate intermittent fasting. And sometimes it could be after being sick. Certainly not as dramatic as what I went through, but your body will let you know. Sometimes you got to break that fast early. Sometimes you need a little bit more calories in your feeding window so that you can last a little longer. All sorts of strategies. But yes, there was definitely a period of this year when I wasn't doing it. In fact, when I did my TED Talk, I was pretty honest about the fact that I shouldn't be doing it, wasn't doing it. But still, people are always curious. But yeah, I think your body will absolutely give you clues that it's not the right strategy at that time.
And then do you think now that you've been back, has that helped you recover more quickly as far as getting back into routine by pushing out the toxins? Because I'm sure you were on antibiotics and all these other things, and your gut biome was a disaster.
Yeah. So not only was I not intermittent fasting, I wasn't allowed to exercise. I just walked. I was that crazy woman that was out walking 3 or 4 miles in my neighborhood because I'm just so accustomed to being active. It was really hard to not be active. So yes, I absolutely, went through this period of time where everything had to be adjusted, and definitely because I was in the hospital with an issue with my digestive system, I had to go home on a very different type of diet than what I would normally eat. And so what I went from was predominantly a paleo-ish diet to a carnivore diet. For whatever reason, my body right now really likes protein and not a whole lot else. I can't handle a lot of fiber. So when I got out of the hospital, I had to have overcooked vegetables, which that's never the way I like them. I couldn't have salad. So I was eating a lot of meat and boiled potatoes and boiled carrots. Anything my mother could shove down my throat. My mom was with us for almost a month. But it's also listening to your body. So my body now, I'm getting closer back to where I was before, but I still can't eat a lot of fiber. And that's been really frustrating because for anyone who likes to eat vegetables, I have to roast things. Eating raw vegetables and my digestive system it's not a happy combination, but we're getting back to where we were before, slowly.
Yeah, and I think this is really important. Like you said, I think our body always tells us the messages. And when we first start intermittent fasting, we always talk about before the fat burning, but then we learn to listen to so many cues about our body. And that's something I really want to get across to people. But when we fast, we're not starving ourselves. We're really listening to hunger cues. We're really listening to, like you said, our refeeding window and making sure that we're getting enough. And that's one thing I see as a huge fasting fail is people then don't refeed. And then the next day they're just, miserable, and it shouldn't be miserable. It should be something that, becomes pretty fluid in your life.
Exactly. And I think, the other piece is that, that you've got to get enough calories in. And for some people, that can be a struggle. And so I said, okay, we got to re-engineer how you're eating. I don't care if you eat 3 meals in your window or 2, whatever works best, but you got to get the calories in, because then you're going from if you're wanting to exercise too, I mean, you have to be savvy about this. If you're not getting enough calories and you're not going to be able to produce the kind of muscle that you're looking for. So that can be hugely problematic. It's interesting. I was talking to someone in the gym about this morning, and they were asking, what was I doing now that I'm finally back to lifting heavy, which, by the way, has taken 5 months to be able to do. It really has been a long process.
Wow.
But you're not going to build good quality muscle if you're not getting enough calories in. And I think most women really have been duped to think that we need carbs more than anything else. And I just remind people, I'm like, let's think about this. We need protein first. We need some healthy fats, not copious amounts. We do need carbohydrates. I do believe we need carbohydrates. You can cycle your carbs. I'm sure Shannon probably talks about that, which is a great strategy. But women north of 40 have to be conscientious about the quality of carbohydrates they're consuming. I can tell when my glycogen, the stored sugar sources in my legs, especially if I'm on a lower carb day and I'm going to lift the next day, I can tell when those stored sugar sources are getting lower because I can feel it. Being really attuned to your body is really critical to not only just more body awareness, but just sleeping well, being able to make those exercises that Shannon kind of, organizes for you. I see them and they're rigorous. To be able to get through those workouts, you got to fuel your body, and you can't be afraid to eat. I think there's also this misnomer that we're going to overeat, when we break our fast. And I always say, then do a timeout. Do a small meal when you break your fast, then eat a larger meal a couple hours later. It's really what works best for you. I find that sometimes people don't eat enough and then they're scavenging for food later in the afternoon. I'm like, you got to be mindful about your nutritional status. And that's really key. I think nutrition is the most important thing you can do for your body. I think people for many years thought it was the reverse. I got to kill myself in the gym and then I can eat like crap. But really what you have to eat really well 80% of the time at least, and then be smart about your exercise, because you should never have to kill yourself in the gym to get results. I just don't believe in that.
No. And I think that, the debunking of the fact that, that we have to push till we're sore, that we have to feel this like onset soreness the next day is really, something that we need to get across to women. And for so long, I did the same thing. I was killing myself in the gym instead of enjoying it as movement. And I think that's a really powerful message for everyone to keep hearing, needing to hear. And I always tell my clients that the gym is an accessory. It is not the main. Food is your main point, because we have to fuel it. And if we're not doing it, we're not going to be strong, and we're not going to.
There's a lot of people in the Fit Pro space that
You just cut out for a second. A sec.
Seems to me to interject it. Yeah. I see. Can you see me now?
Yeah, it just cut out. Let me check there and see if I can get on I have a couple different internet cables here. Let's see. Are you still there? Is that better?
Yeah. No, okay. It was funny. When it freezes like that, I'm like, I'm just going to wait till you move again. I think there are a lot of people in the Fit Pro industry that are on social media, and I think they do a large disservice. And what works for someone at 20 and 30 can be very different than what works for people that are north of 35 or 40. And so I always invite people to understand that distinction is this. Your body can handle abusing it with being crazy in the gym in your 20s and 30s for the most part. When we get a little bit older, we have to be much more gentle to our body. And there's a lot of hormonal reasons why that happens. But the nutrition becomes paramount. You can completely undo all the hard work you do in the gym if you eat like garbage. And by that, I mean a lot of inflammatory foods. I'm sure Shannon has a lot of good information about this, but you have to eat like you love your body, not that you hate it. There was actually a quote, I almost posted it on Instagram this morning, but it was talking about that, in a relation, like eat like you love your body, not that you hate it. And so it goes back to, body acceptance, no body shaming, wherever you are in time and space, post-kids, pre-kids, during your pregnancy, 5 years after, 10 years after. I've got an 11 and a 13-year-old now, and they think it's hilarious when they look at pregnancy pictures of me. And I'm like, it's amazing what the body does.
Right.
And it goes back to some semblance of where it was before. But the point being that, we really need to set examples not only for ourselves and for our friends and our loved ones. And I have boys, but if you have daughters, certainly, being a good role model that, there's more to it than just a number, or whether it's, people get fixated on a weight or a size or what have you. It's really about what's sustainable, what can you do long term, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, etc.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be like, are you happy? Because we all have different ideal bodies and we need to fuel them properly. And everyone has different shapes and sizes, as you said. But you're right. I think we need to use the food as a way to listen to how it makes us feel afterwards. And so last week we did some of that nutrition stuff, like grab the thing that you think is the treat or the cheat. How did that feel an hour later? And then grab the power food. How do you feel an hour later after that? So I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sending it to our kids, like my kids already know about, they're like, are you eating carbs today? Are you doing this? But they're 6 and 3. And then they'll be like, is this organic when they go places?
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
Well, I would rather they don't have to fight battles that I had to fight. And so I think passing that knowledge down to our families, to our husbands, sometimes that aren't involved, to, friends, family, and we can just be the seed. We don't always have to be, vigorously planting, but plant the seed. And
well, and sometimes you don't know. Someone might have to hear the message 10 times before it resonates. Like I acknowledge that my in-laws think I'm completely bananas, which is fine. I don't ever feel like I have to explain myself to them. This is just the way that we eat. This is what, works well for us. And then I look at my children who are, teens and tweens now, and, they're straight A students, they're exceptional athletes, they're good kids. And I always say, part of the reason why they're healthy, they rarely, if ever, get sick, they get good grades, is because we, same kind of philosophy. We exercise so we sleep well, we eat good food so that we don't go well. What's interesting is my kids went to King's Dominion, which is an amusement park in the Washington, D.C. area. And all the kids went with dad. So 2 good friends of mine and their husbands and their kids, all boys. So 6 boys and 3 adult men went to King's Dominion. Well, the kids ate garbage for the whole day. And, my kids came home and were like, they honest to God said, I need to eat a salad. Like, I just can't eat like that. And so I was thrilled. My husband was completely stunned. He was like, both of them were like, I need to eat a salad. I don't normally eat food like that. They didn't feel good. So they make that connection. And so, being the example for our children is really crucial.
That's awesome. The next question is like, I do the 16-8 protocol, but there's several. There is the 1 meal a day, the warrior method, the 5-2, 24-hour fast every other day. Why do you think the 16-8 is the one that you most, tell women and people to use, or how do you feel about the other?
Well, I think that it's something that is easily adaptable to, I think it's reasonable. I think when you're doing a 24-hour fast every other day, that might make people's heads spin. It has to be something that you can do consistently to make it work. And so to me, 16 hours is that perfect kind of number where people can get to 16 hours and they don't feel like they're ready to eat the tablecloth or, anything that's, in their viewpoint. I also think that it is the one that has the best data in terms of consistency. Now, when you're looking at an every other day, 24-hour fast, that's complicated. If you're looking at I'm going to eat normally for 5 days and then eat 2 days at low calories, how many people can do that? And it's really low calories. Like you eat your normal food and then 2 days it's like 500 calories. That's, for some people that could be I'm not advocating that people eat these things, but that could be like a protein bar or a smoothie. That might be your entire caloric intake for the whole day. So typically the reason why I prefer 16 is I think it's feasible and reasonable, and I think it's easier to be consistent with that pattern. I do have a few clients that prefer to do a 16 every other day. And I just say, if you met your goals, and if your goals are whatever it's related to fat loss or being a certain weight or, bringing down your blood sugar, whatever it is, and you're there and you're doing it as a form of maintenance, that's fine. But to answer your question most directly, I think it's just the easiest way to follow intermittent fasting. And I'm all about making things easier. I think when we make it complicated, like I have quite a few intermittent fasting books, and even with my knowledge, sometimes I read through them and I'm like, that's not even clear to me. How is that going to be clear to like a regular person?
Right. Well, I think like you said, then you're not bouncing so much. We are next week in the group going to try some different methods just to see, because I think it's important that people try some different things and whatever works in their lifestyle, of course, because I think we both work with people to, make it fit who they are and how we're works for them. But I agree. It's just easier to like keep that schedule. I don't even use, I know some people use phone apps and different things. I don't need to. I've been doing it for a while, but I know as a starting point, sometimes that's nice to have a little alarm and
reinforcement.
Yeah, exactly.
And for full disclosure, once a month, I'm finally back to being able to do this. I will do a 24-hour fast. And that's always interesting, not only for body awareness, but recognizing what real hunger cues feel like. There's an organic juice company in the States, continental US, I should say, that will ship directly to your door. And so once a month I do this and I enjoy it. And what's interesting, it's truly a practice of fasting. So it's cold pressed vegetable juice that I will drink during the day. So you're staying hydrated. That's really what it's for. And it gives you this whole digestive rest. I really enjoy it because that's when the mind takes over. Because when you get close to that 24-hour mark, you get hungry, but not hungry so that you can't function. But your body will remind you, I'm really looking forward to 7 p.m. because then at 7 p.m. you're going to give me something.
Well, and I think I always find when I do it, I do the same thing. I do every other month. So I'll do like a water fast 1 month and then a juice cleanse or rest the next month. And I just bounce back and forth because I can get cold pressed on the island here, but I can't get I think you're talking about the weekly juice maybe. But my clients do have access to that or places in their community. But I always feel like cognitively I'm so clear because of that rest. And so the first one I always tell clients is very difficult and I think it's definitely mind. But then as I do it, I look forward to those days. I feel like it's when I'm my keenest in my work and content and all these things.
Absolutely. And think about it, your insulin levels are low. So, you have the ability to, really tap into the benefits, mentally. And so you think about it, like physiologically back when we were cave women and cavemen, there was a reason why, because you would literally feed and then you might not find food again for a couple of days. So your body, you needed to have your senses be very acute and very tuned in. And so that's one of the benefits, I think, is I get so much work done. I mean, I spend a lot of the day running back and forth to the bathroom because I'm so well hydrated, but it's also one of those things where I will find that I'm like, I feel like a rock star. And then, maybe 3 hours before I'm hit, so maybe at 20 to 24 hours is when I really start to feel hungry. And I just remind myself, I'm like, distraction, I'll go for a walk.
Right.
Just keep myself hydrated. And then, I break my fast with something little. But yeah, I think it's as much of a psychological fast as much as it's a physiologic fast. So your body and your mind are both fasting, which can be challenging for sure.
Definitely. So how do you see in the future? I know there's been many articles, fasting is becoming much more mainstream. There's also other countries, Russia, different places that are doing elongated fast for cancer. And I have tapped into reading. I have several cancer survivors in my groups that use it or have used it before post chemo. And so what do you think the merge will be? Do you think it will ever go really Western, or do you think that would just ruin too many pharma?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that because I've started to kind of cultivate a community on Twitter specifically of Western medicine trained MDs and nurses and nurse practitioners who feel similarly. We're all Western medicine trained, but we see value in thinking beyond the obvious. And so, the data really shows, so there's specific things that prolonged fasts are good for. And prolonged, I'm really looking at 3 to 5 day fasts. Those are challenging. But we know that they impact telomere length. So, it impacts, healthy aging in a very beneficial way. But most people, that's not what they want to do because you just don't have, if you do a prolonged fast, you're not going to have the kind of energy you have with a 24 or 48-hour fast. So it's not necessarily realistic for people to do that all the time. There's a company called Prolon, and it's kind of gimmicky. I'm not a huge fan of it, but they will literally give you food to eat during your fast, which goes completely contrary to, I always say, I'm kind of a purist. Like if you're eating, then you're no longer fasting, but they feel like you can eat these very low calorie things while you're fasting. So if anyone's seen those ads, they seem to be rampant all over Facebook, or maybe it's because of my interest that's what Facebook algorithm shifts for me to see. So yes, I do think it's can be particularly beneficial. I have a patient right now who's who's undergoing breast cancer treatment. And so before she begins chemo, she starts initially with a juice cleanse and then will fast during her chemotherapy treatment. And she's found that that's actually made her feel a whole lot better. So I think it really goes down to what are your goals? What are you looking for? I think there are always extremists. I always think of Dave Asprey. Do you know Dave Asprey?
Yes.
He's the Bulletproof Coffee guy. He's a little extreme. He's always biohacking like crazy. And what's interesting is he's actually younger than I am, but I think he looks older than me. When I actually found out his age, I was like, no way, he looks so much older
Right.
than that. And then he's this big biohacker. But I think you'll always find people that are kind of pushing the envelope. But I think realistically, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, I like to exercise quite a bit. And so for me, it would not be realistic for me to go 4 or 5 days not exercising, because you really can't when you're doing a prolonged fast. So to me, I would have to really weigh the benefits. I mean, I love the idea of like anti-aging benefits, but I'm still getting those from a shorter fast. And quite frankly, I like to eat. So I don't think I'd want to go 4 or 5 days. Although I respect the people that want to do that. That's just not part of my wheelhouse.
And that might be something that people tap into like once a year and then they really plan for it. But I don't think it's something like prolonged. But I do know the same thing. I have a chemo patient that is doing the same thing. So they do a 24 before and then fast after. And there's like right away when they started doing it, it was amazing. This is just one instance. I am not a doctor. I do not prescribe, but that they were just their energy levels post and the effects of the drug, because it is like renewing those cells, and cancer loves sugar and food and all of those things. And so, and then getting all of the poisons of chemotherapy back out of their body as quickly as possible.
And it's a tough, I like the idea of complementary medicine with traditional Western medicine, because it brings the best of both together. But obviously it's whatever works for you and your body. And like Shannon said, it sounds like your client and the one that I'm referring to as well, they have found like a middle ground. And so, and with permission, they've had discussions with their oncology team, and they've been very supportive. So yes, I think that, especially when you're dealing with cancer, we know that, cancer cells particularly like sugars and carbs. And so that's, the opposite of what we try to direct people to enjoying during that time period, just to maximize the results and lessen the likelihood that they'll have any sequelae or any problems. So,
and unfortunately, I think a lot of people do when they are refeeding after and they feel hungry again. It is the carbs that they crave. Yeah. So great. So I just want to, wrap up the time. I know you're having to go get your boys, and also I want to make sure everyone's honored tonight that joined us with the replay. But what is one message you want to leave the world? Not maybe just about intermittent fasting, but what is something that's just on your heart that you hope that one day that you're remembered for, or that people are like, wow, that's Cynthia?
Yeah. I mean, I would say just the whole concept of limiting beliefs. I think I grew up, I'm in my 40s and my mom is now in her 70s. And the one thing I've really listened to my mother and my aunts and friends of mine talk about are these limiting beliefs, like women somehow after a certain age are no longer of interest, or they just don't feel valued. And so I want women to know that they are valued. They're valuable our entire lifetime. We spend 40% of our lifetime in menopause, like after menopause. So if anyone thinks that, as if it's like you fall off a cliff once you hit a certain age, that's really not the case. And so I want people to know you can live joyful, happy, healthy lives throughout your lifetime, but you have to be much more diligent as you get older. The self-care piece becomes critical. The diet piece becomes critical. And by diet, I mean nutrition, because I don't believe in diets. I think whatever you do needs to be sustainable long-term, and recognizing there are lots of strategies and lots of ways to go about it, but to recognize that limiting beliefs are really what we have in our heads. And so I don't subscribe to limiting beliefs. In fact, if you see me speak publicly, I say that nearly every single time. Like, I just don't believe in them. I refuse to accept that we have to think a certain way just because we're north of 35 or 40 or 45, wherever we are. So yeah, that's what I hope. Certainly the interesting thing for me is that I was telling someone the other day that I think the most critical piece for me at this stage in my life is just acknowledging there's so much more to come. And I don't want people to be fearful of aging. Like, I'm not embarrassed of my age. I was saying to Shannon that I'm getting ready to go to my 30th high school reunion, which is just hard for me to wrap my head around. But I think you can live joyfully throughout your life. And I don't say that to be Pollyanna-ish or naive, but we're really designed to be enjoying our lives. And I just hope for everyone they ascribe to a philosophy where they feel similarly, because the alternative is not one I want to think about.
Right. Well, and I love that, because I think it is true that we're put in it's like all of a sudden you hit your 30s, and even that is this weird thing for women. And then 40 is even worse. And then 50, we were like, you said, we dropped off the cliff or something like that.
I think people feel invisible.
each decade brings on new awareness and, new empowerment. I really feel like when I hit my 40s, I was like empowered to not give a shit about what people thought, and to like just really try to tap into who I wanted to share with my children, with my family, with the world. So.
Well, and it's interesting because I was telling someone the other day, I just find women in their 40s and beyond more interesting. And it's largely because you really have evolved into the person that you are supposed to be. Yeah. And there's not a concern for making everybody else happy. You're living this honest, virtuous life. And it's like, I'm living it on my terms, what works best for me and my life and my family. And that's really what's most important.
I think we shed a lot of masks. So I agree. So, well, thank you so much for your time and for your energy. And I will replay this obviously for the group, and then I will tag, and if you want to follow Cynthia or her groups, then I will put those also in the messages. And again, she is the co-host of Everyday Wellness. It's a podcast. It's amazing. And she's a great resource within our group. And then if, it comes to time that you are just really struggling, she has her own programs that really work with hormones and things that I don't do and that are her wheelhouse. And that's the thing about this industry is like, I am not here to do everything. I am my best at what I do, and she's here to do her best. And that's that whole abundance mindset. And if we're not supporting each other in this industry, then those are the people you need to watch out for, I feel.
Exactly. And that's the really nice thing is that, I don't know if I felt this way, in medicine before I became an entrepreneur, but certainly there are so many amazing women in this space that really genuinely just want to do whatever it takes to be able to support one another. And that's priceless. There's something to be said for that. So very grateful for your friendship, Shannon.
Yes. And you also, so you have a great evening, I guess you're going into.
We're going to go stand on a pool deck from 4:30 till like 10. My kids have a swim team event tonight, so it'll be interesting.
Well, at least hopefully you'll get some work done too, right?
Well, no, it's so hot and humid here that it's kind of like, what do I describe? It's kind of like a swamp. Northern Virginia in the summer is like 95 degrees with 100% humidity. So it's really, I literally have gym clothes on. So I literally stand on the pool deck and just sweat and it's probably good. It's probably very therapeutic to be sweating.
We are just working into our humidities here, but it's not the same. When I lived in the West Indies, it was certainly, we always called it like swamp ass because it's just you're dripping. And it's,
that'll be me very shortly. So
well, thank you. Have a great afternoon. And I look forward to the comments from everybody, and Cynthia will do her best. I know she's going on vacation. I'm going to replay this before, but even if she comes back and sees things when she returns,
be happy to help.
We'll just answer your questions as they come.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.